everybody. Well, Web3 was supposed to be incredibly secure, the encryption lauded over and over again, but really it's become a bit of a cybersecurity disaster, hasn't it? Hackers have stolen more than $4 billion in cryptocurrency to date. So what's to be done? What is to be done? Or is it just still early days for crypto? Who knows? To discuss these issues, we're joined by Jessy Irwin, CEO of Amulet, Stephen Tong, CEO of Zellic, and interrogating them is our very own moderator, Lorenzo Franceschi Biccarai. Give them a big round of applause, everybody. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. We're here to talk about crypto. Thank you, Jessy and Stephen, for being here. I would like to begin with some numbers. According to an estimate, there are around $38 billion stored in crypto today. And last year, hackers stole around $2.7 billion in crypto. That's almost 10% of all the liquidity in crypto. Jessy, what the hell? Like, why are hackers stealing so much crypto?
The incentives for being able to just go out and hack this code are wild. We have a built-in bug bounty program where if you find a bug, the money falls out into your lap. Part of the reason that it looks this way is because the primitives that we get to build on, the code that we get to use isn't quite as trustworthy or strong as we'd like it to be. But also, when you're looking at more conventional technology, we have these immense security organizations and frameworks and all kinds of tools and risk management and threat modeling we can put into place. But those organizations tend to have some sort of central structure. And in the blockchain space, we love decentralization, but it adds complexity. And when you're dealing with folks who are tinkering and hacking and playing, you're not always going to have a group of people who are thinking about the need to put an application security program or a plan in place to keep these catastrophic bugs from making their way into code and then getting money out.
Stephen, what do you think? Why is this happening?
Like why we keep losing money?
Yeah, why are we losing so much crypto every day to hackers?
I think Jessy put it well. If we look at it on the surface level, the market for bugs here is very liquid because normally, if you have a bug, let's say you have an Uber ATO, like an account takeover, you have to find someone to broker this bug and sell it. And they're going to have to sell it to someone who can actually run that campaign. Whereas in crypto, it's extremely liquid because you can just like immediately exercise it for its market value, like how much you can steal with it, right? And then at the same time, the technology is not mature. I think if we look at it more fundamentally, the design constraints that we see in the Web3 space are you want it to be permissionless and you want it to be decentralized. So decentralized is great for censorship resistance, but at the same time, it means that there's no central authorities, and because of it, there's no undo buttons, right? So a mistake is catastrophic. When we wire money to the wrong bank account, if you email the bank really fast, usually they can fix it. You can't do that in crypto, right? And when you have a permissionless system, there's no identity, and this is great for democratization, right? But it also means that there's no social costs. For example, there's lots of systems out there like BGP, which are not very secure, but everyone plays nice because everyone has like a Delaware C Corp or something, and they don't want to like have other people be mad. But in blockchain, there's no such social cost.
Yeah. We had a panel on ransomware before that was great, and we hear about ransomware all the time because obviously it's a huge problem. In 2022, the FBI received thousands of reports totaling at least 34 million with an M, not a B. And obviously the losses are much higher because we don't know about it. But that's still much lower than crypto hacks. So Stephen, do you think that the public and even the cybersecurity press maybe not talk about crypto security enough?
I think they're just desensitized to it.
Is it just because there's too many hacks and we just lost track of them?
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think, Jessy?
I mean, we get to a point where every time you hear news about crypto, it's how big is the latest amount of money that fell out of a blockchain and what did the winner take home this time? It kind of reminds me a lot of when you're watching the news and you hear about the latest art heist and only so many paintings can get stolen and only so many hacks can be adventurous and impressive before it's boring and we're ready to move on to something else.
Is it also, do you think it's also because it's a sort of still a niche industry and not a lot of people are aware of the existence of crypto or don't own crypto?
Somewhat, but I know that the news is getting out there when I have a grandparent call me and say, that wasn't your blockchain, was it? So I think the information, or at least the blast impact of these hacks and explosions, it's out there a little bit. But I think when you look at all the other things going on in the world, we have, banking crises, and we have all kinds of macroeconomic things going on. A little bit of a war for inattention as well.
Yeah. So I've been covering this space for a couple of years now, and maybe I'm a pessimist, but I don't have a feeling that the security in crypto is getting better. Do you think is that fair, Stephen? Am I being too pessimistic?
I think it is slowly getting better as people get more accustomed to building in such a hostile environment. When you take, let's just say, web developers and you dump them into a mission-critical environment, there's a period where you have to culturally acclimate to that. I also think that the fundamental problems are still there, though. Decentralized and permissionless. It makes it very hard to build a secure system. For example, it's very hard to think of a plausible design for like a secure platform or a firewall, given those design constraints. It's just a very hostile space in general, and people have to get used to building in that.
What do you think, Jess? Is it getting better?
I do think that we are seeing people truly understand the reasons you want security plans, security programs, and coordination and incident response. They're understanding why they want those things, and I see more demand for them day by day. That said, some of the more fundamental things that we need to do to alter the development process and put architectural designs and threat modeling in place, that's not as accessible as it could be for helping us better manage risk in code. Folks are slowly coming around to it. So I have hope. I get asked for much more interesting security strategies and to solve more exciting problems than I did 5 years ago. And being asked for a run book, for example, is like, yes, you want a plan. So that's great, but it is very slow.
Yeah. Is it also an issue of educating the people in the space because they don't come from the cybersecurity industry?
Most definitely. I've had the privilege in my career to see and work with teams of all sizes across the entire technology sector, and it's been amazing. But a lot of folks in crypto, they are self-taught, they're tinkerers. It reminds me of a lot of my hacker friends. But when you haven't seen what it looks like to push code into production that's high reliability and has all of these things done to it to run bugs out, it's difficult to know what you should be doing, and there is a gap there. So it's a lot of trying to introduce things to folks and make it accessible. And sometimes they get it, and other times they call back a year and a half later and say, yeah, that thing. What was it? I want it now.
Yeah, so there's a lot of teaching.
Yeah.
Do you have to do a lot of teaching to your customers, Stephen? Like how much do you have to explain to them how important your job is?
Depends on the customer.
Yeah. And just out of curiosity, have any of you gotten your crypto stolen before?
Me? I mean, I lost some Bitcoin. It's on a hard drive somewhere in a landfill, but I haven't had it stolen before now.
Yeah. How about in the audience? Has anyone gotten their crypto stolen? Yeah, it is a big problem. So what are you, what's your advice if someone comes to you and says, I want to have some crypto, how do I secure it? What do you tell your friends, maybe that not techie, about how to protect their crypto?
I guess it depends on your threat model. So I think if your threat model is like cyber criminals, which I think is the most common one, it also depends on how much money you have and kind of like if you're a corporation or not. So if you're a company, you should probably have like a multi-sig, and all the bearers of the multi-sig keys should be hardware wallets. And you should make sure that you have like, M out of N, where the numbers M and N make sense. If you're individual, I think you should use a hardware wallet. You should disable two-factor authentication. You should disable SMS-based two-factor authentication on all your services, especially email, because your email is kind of like your root password for your web identity. And then make sure to turn on like app-based two-factor for everything. And then you should be fairly secure. Or you can deposit in a centralized custodian if you're like acceptable, if you find that acceptable for your use case.
Generally, having a hardware wallet is great. It really does depend on what you're worried about. Most of the time, especially when I work with core teams and we're dealing with these, token plans and grants, the problem is that we have to protect an address for a long term, and if you're married, your spouse needs to be able to use it and access the information. If you live in California, you can't write it down in a notebook. You have to have one of these metal cryptocurrency wallet stamps just in case. It really depends, but for the most part, really just hardware wallets and being very strategic about how long you are willing to leave your crypto in an exchange or in someone else's hands is really key. Because even if you do leave crypto in a centralized exchange that you trust, we saw FTX. We've seen tokens go away when reserves are mismanaged. So it's good to hold it on your own. It's a little more complex, but definitely store it offline and don't let it live on the computer you use every day.
Yeah, unfortunately, exchanges are one of the favorite targets of North Korean government hackers. And Stephen, I just wanted to go back a little bit to, you said have multi-sig or multi-signature if you're an organization. Can you explain a little bit more about why that is important?
If you have a checking account for your company, you probably have dual approval on it. You probably need to have multiple admins to approve transactions above like $100,000, for example. These are policies that you also probably want on your cryptocurrency treasury as well. I also wanted to mirror Jessy's thought. I think that air gapping is an excellent solution and not enough people use it. So some practical implementations of multi-sigs popping the stack would be Gnosis Safe, that's very popular, or if you want to get fancy, you can like pay Fireblocks a very large SaaS subscription for some NPC stuff.
So we're starting to see like cybersecurity folks like you come to the industry, come to the crypto industry. What does the industry need to do better still to protect people's crypto?
I think one of the things that I've experienced is just in designing and being part of developing these protocols, there are some sharp corners and some rough edges. We definitely have abstraction to do so that these tools and these platforms are more usable. A lot of that work, we've seen in the normal web. The Google Chrome team did an amazing job on their usable security work. We need that in the crypto space to improve outcomes for the people who rely on our chains. But we also just need to really be intentional about what we're building and have a plan to protect it at every step. I mean, we have regulation breathing down our necks every single day. And having had experience in fintech already, like you either get regulated or you self-regulate. No matter how decentralized we are, though, we've created these amazing, crazy, wild protocols and chains. They do incredible stuff. So we just need to link arms a little more often and figure out how to really make it work for the people who use these tools.
What do we need to do better, Stephen?
I think it comes down to a multitude of factors. We need to improve across the board. I think one would be better developer education, as Jessy has said, better culture around development practices. For example, we still see a lot of clients deploy code, they say, give code to us that is not tested whatsoever, literally no unit tests. So that needs to not happen. I know I'm being quite prescriptive, but I would hope that software I deploy my money into has unit tests. I think better UX for the user side of things is extremely important. Better user education is just as valuable. A lot of people lose their money to phishing. This is still like one of the top ways people lose their money, not to smart contract hacks or bad custodians. And I think there's some other ones that, but they're not as important as developer education, user education, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's important. And at the same time, I think it's fair to say that, a lot of people like you have come to the industry. There have been some improvements. So what do you think has improved in terms of the ecosystem of cybersecurity companies coming to crypto? How is that changing the crypto world?
Well, I think there's definitely more of an acknowledgement that vulnerability assessments need to be a part of the process for putting code into production. In the past few years, we've also seen a lot of security folks, instead of rush to make, the meanest joke about a blockchain, really come to the front lines and help people figure out how do we manage all of this user burden and all of this risk that's on our shoulders. So I see more collaboration and cooperation. That said, one thing that is a struggle is sometimes vendors know that there aren't enough security engineers. They don't have an informed customer to push back on them. And every once in a while, that can make my job or the trust that folks using these chains put in them a little bit more difficult.
What do you think about the cybersecurity ecosystem coming to crypto? That's a good thing, right?
I largely mirror what Jessy said. Yeah.
And actually, I'm curious, what brought you to this space? You both come from cybersecurity, traditional quote-unquote cybersecurity. What brought you to crypto?
I guess. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. I guess me and my friends were all hackers. That's how we started Zellic. We really enjoy learning about new, novel technology and finding weird bugs in them. And we wanted to also apply our skills where they're the most valuable. We figured that iOS 0 days are cool, but people are losing hundreds of millions of dollars. That seems fairly important, and we should work on it.
Yeah. What about you, Jessy? What brought you here?
I think for me, I've seen traditional security teams of every size and shape, servicing organizations, all kinds of complex problems. There's such a huge opportunity with all of this decentralization we have to step back, to look at what's not working in our existing cybersecurity and engineering practices, and to just tear it all down and start over. We could have developers pick up some of the security practices that most companies struggle to put in place anyway. We could get better security outcomes. We could run more bugs out of code. And we have an opportunity to actually integrate how we do security into development so that it's an optimization and not this extra weird, scary thing no one understands or knows how to do. And I think that is probably one of the most exciting opportunities with all the creativity and energy in the space that I see here. There are many, but the chance to just rebuild what security could look like so it's easier or more natural just is thrilling.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I remember talking to someone a couple of years ago who works in the space as well, and he told me that in his opinion we should think of the code that goes into smart contracts the same way that we think of code that goes into airplanes, satellites, rockets. It's so-called mission critical, meaning that you have to get it right from the get-go. Because if you ship it with serious bugs, it's going to go tragically bad. As you said, millions of dollars are going to go away. Stephen, is that a fair and accurate way to look at crypto and coding crypto? And why is it so hard to secure?
Yeah, I think the NTSB states the chance of dying in a plane crash is 1 in 30 million or so. If you look at the amount of money in DeFi and the amount of dollars that have been stolen, it's more like $1 in $20 per dollar. So 1 in 30 million versus 1 in 20, I think we should try to close that gap.
And how do we do that? What's the first step?
The first step is to write unit tests for the smart contracts.
That's a good one. I also think step 2 is we're seeing this movement towards interoperability in the blockchain space. In a lot of places, we are using smart contracts to bridge one chain to another as load-bearing infrastructure, when frankly, it's really risky to do that, and we shouldn't be doing it. If we're able to innovate more quickly in the area of interoperability, and of course, I work in Cosmos, we love our inter-blockchain communication, if we're able to do that more securely, these bridge hacks that you're probably tired of reporting on at this point, they go away. We get to solve more exciting problems around virtualization and cryptography, maybe even cryptographic agility. That would be amazing. So I think if we just keep innovating on interoperability, a lot of the things that are brittle and break and are being misused just won't be the leading story in the industry anymore.
Yeah. So bridges are a big weak link here. So are you saying that we should move away from the bridges completely, or from the way they are right now?
Well, I think ultimately, if we get strong interoperability between all these ecosystems, the bridges we decide we want might look a little different, but we might not end up needing them at all. And I think that would be just amazing for the era of these bridges that explode and catch on fire to just be over. So we can worry about other things.
Yeah. What do you think, Stephen?
About what?
About the the issue with bridges and securing them.
Bridges are load-bearing infrastructure. I agree with that. They need to be really secure, and it's generally hard to secure them. I think the track record speaks to that. I don't know if that should exclude us from building bridges in general. I just think that we have to be very careful. Just because space shuttles are very hard to build doesn't mean that we shouldn't build them.
Yeah, and you have a company that does security audits, Stephen, which that's your specialty. How do you think crypto founders should think about audits?
They should seek them throughout the process and early. They should not be thought of an afterthought where you wave the security wand and you make the problems go away. This is generally going to lead to worse outcomes because the earlier you integrate security into your process, the less expensive it will be. For example, if you catch the issues during development and testing, it's as cheap as having an issue and having a ticket to fix that issue. If you find this in like a post-development review sprint, then you might have to go back and make changes to code that you've already gone to code freeze on, which is more expensive. If you get it during an audit, you're going to have to pay for the audit. If you get it during a bug bounty, you have to pay the bounty, which is more expensive. If you get white-hatted or if you get black-hatted, the costs increase as you go through this development pipeline. So it should be done early. And it's also very important to remember that the security reviews are meant to be consultative in best efforts, and you can't expect external reviews to catch everything. So it's very important to have security across the board as a process and not just a point in time, magic wand.
Yeah, so audit early and often, and don't just think that it's a stamp of approval forever, right? That's one of the misconceptions I think that people have.
Right.
I've been audited, we're good.
Yeah, I think to add to that, sometimes in crypto, a security audit is the only security treatment that something gets before it goes into production. If we don't have unit tests, then we don't understand the correctness of the code and if it works as intended. Usually the vulnerability is where we don't understand the code and it doesn't work as intended. To see a team sort of step back and have a more holistic perspective of how to execute on security would definitely make the world better. But also just to see some vendors step up and say, hey, this is not, it's not a health check. There are no bugs left in your code. Would be really, really helpful because too often I see tweets fly by and marketing blogs say, oh, well, we passed our audit. No, audits don't work like that.
Yeah. And I think it's fair to say that sometimes crypto feels like the Wild West of finance, with obscure companies, with obscure business models, weird names, and they get hacked. But, who are the actual victims? Jessy, who are we,
I mean, a few years ago, when we were all stuck at home during COVID, I had friends who I hadn't heard from since I was in high school call me and say, what's this crypto thing? I'm going to take my savings and I'm going to make a ton of money and I'm going to retire. We're at the point now where people hear about, this ability, maybe in a happier market cycle, to profit. And it's not just a bunch of institutions who are losing funds. It's not just a bunch of investors. There are countries on this planet where Bitcoin's used more than fiat currency. And there are places where it's immensely difficult to transfer money, and that's what this is used for. So it's not just some rich guy who, drives a Lambo and eats a bunch of steak and makes Bitcoin carnivore jokes. There are real people here. And we need to be really thoughtful about the outcomes for them. I mean, we need to be responsible enough so that when people do put money here, it doesn't destroy their entire financial future to have a bug, even if they took on more risk than they should have in the first place.
Yeah. Do you think the crypto industry maybe doesn't think about, individual investors, like retail investors as much?
I think industry-wide, there is a lot of focus on institutions because we are looking for widespread adoption and we want to see big things happen. And what I always push back to say is when you look at large economies, half of the economy is an enterprise giant institution, and the other half is, small businesses, small retail investors really have to think about what it looks like on both sides.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Stephen? I saw you nodding.
I think that if you go on the Twitter account Coinfessions, I've read enough stories of people who have lost their life savings to know that retail is usually the one who suffers in the end. And I find that fact very unfair. Because if you're the founder of like a DeFi and it blows up, if you raise money for that venture, that's not really your money. But the people that lost money in that hack, they deposited their personal savings and wealth. And for a lot of people who live in countries that are not, for example, the United States, that's a lot of money for them. And it's very unfair. And that's also why we do this job.
Yeah. I think something that also people don't realize maybe is that Web3 or DeFi has a lot of Web2 problems, right? I think the industry wants to pretend that it's completely new and everything is different, but there are Web2 problems in Web3 as well. Stephen, can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, phishing.
Yeah.
Phishing is so bad. Here, people will hijack the social media accounts of Bored Apes. I know the director of security at Bored Ape Yacht Club, and he tells me about the insane steps they go through to secure just their Twitter account because people want to take it over to launch a phishing campaign. It's new airdrop, and then there's a wallet drainer website it will link them to. Or another one is they'll do BGP or DNS stuff. For example, I think last year they hacked the front end of Curve using DNS to do phishing there. It's crazy. I think better UX can do that, better education can help solve that, but it's horrible. And not just that, there's the classic problems of securing sensitive key material, right? You need to not have your private key be leaked. Seed phrases are not great. And it's not just a user problem, it's an institutional problem. I mean, if you think back all the way to the very first large crypto hack, it's Mt. Gox. That's not a fancy smart contract hack. That's just their backend infrastructure got pwned and their keys got stolen and the bitcoins are gone.
Yeah, and sometimes hackers just take advantage of Discord channels, right? They take over the Discord channel or a Discord bot and phish everyone on the channel.
Yeah.
And Web 2 security is the foundation. You cannot have Web 3 security without Web 2 security.
Yeah, so you need to get both right.
Yeah. There's so much opportunity in the space, and the attacks that people pull off are always going to be the most simple, the least expensive they can, because most of the attacks are financially motivated. That said, I've been playing with blockchain since 2017. I have not seen a single security problem cross my desk that I did not experience before I started playing with blockchains in my career. I mean, people talk about how difficult it is to build a strong crypto wallet. I raise them that we know things about browser extensions from password managers. There's so many application security problems. There are so many attestation problems. And there's so much we probably need to figure out about adopting more trusted computing models so we have better things to work with. But I don't see anything just so shockingly new that we don't have prior knowledge somewhere else in the security field to help us figure out how to reason about it.
Yeah, we have the knowledge, we just need to apply it in the right place in the right way. So I guess just to finish, I'm curious, would you recommend your non-techie friends and relatives to invest in crypto? Or do you recommend it?
I'm not allowed to speak on investment advice.
Fair.
I do not have that prohibition, but I would say generally, I'm a security engineer. I'm not entirely risk intolerant, but the market's not great right now, and we don't know how things are going to shake out. I can't say during a period of instability, hack all the things, drop all your money in there, because that's not what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for coming, and thank you for listening, everyone.